Welcome, everyone, to our community joining us from all over the world. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from whichever country you're joining us. I know we represent over 121 countries today, and that is more than amazing. Please remember to comment, and we'll give a quick hi to your country and to you. I want to firstly introduce myself. My name is Nabila Tarin. I am Head of Public Relations and Events at The Whole Price. And secondly, introduce today's wonderful panel for our digital speaker series on exponential technology. For our first-timers out there, as you know, The Whole Price is the global leader in impact education for the youth around the world. We do an array of programs, summits, accelerators, certificates, and more. And Digital Speaker Series is just one of those other amazing products that came to be. It was first launched in 2020. Of course, with the COVID crisis, we were thinking about how to reconnect with our 2.1 million community of people around the world and just talk about topics that not necessarily whole price, but just anything that our youth wanted to hear. So this product was basically designed by you and for you. You guys gave us the topics you wanted to hear about and the speakers you wanted to hear from. And we just are here to deliver and use our amazing network of mentors, experts, and alumni to bring into the sphere. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's host or MC. Her name is Dana Daras. She is our Whole Price social media and marketing specialist, but also the founder and host of our very own radio talk show called Lady Dana. I really hope you enjoy today's panel on technology, a topic that I am personally passionate about, and I think it's so important to talk about today with the rapid growth and the way it's interacting with our society and how we interact today with everything going virtual. So without further ado, I will hand over the mic to Dana, and I hope you enjoy. Please comment, please share. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, good morning, according to your time zone. My name is Dana Derras. I am a software engineering student, or as I'd like to call myself, a software engineer in training. I am also, as Nabila said, I am the founder and host of my own radio show about business and entrepreneurship called Lady Dana. And I am the marketing and media specialist in Halt Prize. And I'll be your hostess and moderator for this panel. I'm really excited and humbled to be among such amazing tech entrepreneurs who are just revolutionizing their industries. And being a software engineering student, this subject is like right, perfect for me. So I'm really excited to be among all of our amazing tech speakers. And let's start by introducing our amazing speakers, starting with Mr. Riaz Shah, who is a partner and global learning leader at EY. Could we have him, please?
Hello. Hi, Dana. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good. I was surprised by the timing of this, but that's daylight savings time for you, confusing the hell out of us. But yeah. I'm really glad to be able to be here. I'm heavily involved in the Halt Prize and love being part of it.
So just explaining to our audience, now waiting for our other speakers to join in because of this confusion. We're just going to start with you today.
Okay.
So could you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. My career is really kind of unusual for today's people because I've been with pretty much the same firm my entire life. So I've actually been with my firm longer than most of you have been alive. So I've been with my firm 38 years. And anybody who knows me knows that I get bored really easily after about, a couple of years of doing something. Oh, get me out of here. I've got to go and do something else. And that's what I've done. Every 2-3 years, I've done a different role in that time. And currently my role is global learning leader. My previous role, I was an IT consultant for many years. And my life is all about learning, technology, and social impact. So those three things come together very well in this chat we're having today.
You must really, really love your firm if you stayed with it for 38 years, honestly.
Yep, I do indeed.
That's super, super cool. And I cannot wait to hear more about it a little bit later. But as I see, we have our second speaker for the day, Mr. Arvind Gupta, the co-founder of Digital India Foundation. Mr. Arvind, hello. You were muted. Could you please unmute yourself?
Yes, that's a little bit of technology hiccups always, apart from the time zone hiccups that we have had. But in any case, glad to be here. Hi, Dana, and I said hi, Riaz. We have, a very, very good panel today. I'm looking forward to discussing this whole concept of what is exponential technology and how does it impact our lives, our societies. Something that we have learned and unlearned over the last 25, 30 years. So. Unlike Riaz, I have actually changed my career paths like a number of times that I can't even think of. The common piece has been technology. In fact, Riaz, I worked in the ENY San Francisco office also for 2 years in the early days of the internet commerce area. So from early days of e-commerce, where I was, or e-business or whatever it was called in that form, where I was lucky enough to be the part of the team at University of Illinois that developed the first browser, to using technology in a society like India, which like 7-8 years ago had only 1 in 10 people access the internet. Today, it's almost 2/3 of Indian population is accessing the internet. So seeing that evolution of technology being the game changer, and working in startups, working as a venture capitalist and a policymaker, I think it's been a great journey. So that's my background in brief. I still remain a student of technology. I do teach technology, but I think at every class I teach, I end up learning a little bit more. So that's my background, Dana. So look forward to this discussion.
Thank you for joining us today. And I do agree with you. I don't think anyone ever stops being a student of technology. So that is really cool. It's an ever continuing experience. So today's panel, as we have explained earlier, is about exponential technology. Exponential technology includes, but is not limited to, artificial intelligence, augmented and virtual reality, data science, digital biology, fintech, all of that. So it's something pretty new to include in regular industries that are really not used to this kind of evolution. So, which brings us to my very first question. Do you think that some industries are still resistant to technological integration? Is it possible to change that mindset? I think we can start with you, Mr. Riaz, about your point of view.
Yeah, I'm not so much sure it's industries, although actually McKinsey does publish a list of which industries have implemented AI more. And you wouldn't be surprised to hear that agriculture is fairly low down the list, and construction. So both of those are towards the bottom of the list industry-wise. However, within agriculture, you'll see a whole bunch of startups that are doing incredible things that have never been done before. Somebody like Plenty is a company called Plenty in San Francisco, which is building in underground farms all of this kale, which can be delivered very quickly, very freshly, very expensively to restaurants up above ground. So things like that, where you can create plants for using 1/100th of the water, is just incredible. So I think there are definitely industries where generally in the industry people are not awake to all of this technological change, but that just has more opportunity for the startups, more opportunity for people like the people we have at Holt Prize to make a difference.
It's still an untapped market.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask you, Mr. Arvind, the same question. Do you see, since you have a huge experience in integrating and digitalizing industries, especially in India, do you see that some industries are still super resistant to technological integration? And why is that? Why are they still resistant?
See, there is a, what Riaz said, there is a McKinsey view of the world, and I'm not writing any McKinsey or a EN, whatever, the views are very different. India, developing nation views and Silicon Valley views are very different. One thing that has taught me, Silicon Valley is a very top-down view, addressing a very, starting with non-societal problems. These are problems of efficiency being taken to a next level. India is now, countries like India, Africa are actually solving a different problem. How do you use technology for better livelihood, right? And that's what Riaz says, agriculture. The farmers, if they get a solution that can increase their crops, the yield of the crop, their livelihood, their incomes, they will adopt it. And so the resistance is really making technology available in an affordable manner that solves real solutions. The resistance is not of tech being adopted. So I could have the greatest AR and VR, but it's at a price point that I cannot afford. So I think we have to look at the world from a very, very different lens. I don't see anybody anywhere not appreciating the use of technology. And during COVID, we've seen the poorest of the poor finding a low-end smartphone to give it to their kids to be able to study online classes. Now, this is a new digital entrant who will now use for their solutions, for their family, for their livelihood, a digital platform. We have to give, as technology entrepreneurs, as innovation evangelists, as disruptors, a solution that meets his or her needs. So I think the answer should be whether we have technology available at a price that solves problems of industries that are there right now. And I think that's where we're the challenge.
So you think it's a financial concern above all, right?
Everything is a financial concern at the end of the day. If you have technology, if you tell me I can, the SpaceX will cost $100 million for me to go to the moon, nobody's going to take it. It becomes $10,000. There are people who are going to line up to do that, right? So,
for sure, 100%.
Just coming back to one thing Arvind said, in terms of adoption of these in emerging markets, if you look at something like fintech and say how much fintech adoption is going on around the world, the US is at just under 50% fintech adoption. But you look at China, it's above 80%, India above 80%, Russia above 80%, South Africa, Colombia, Peru. These are the top 6 markets for fintech. They're all emerging markets. So the wonderful thing about emerging markets is if you can provide something at the right price point, you can actually get greater tech adoption than you do in the West.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what Riaz just said, because here it's a need to be able to, the technology is not a fancy instrument. Technology is an instrument that makes my life, my livelihood, my job. So why did fintech get adopted, for example, in India? We could open bank accounts. Financial inclusion happened. I could save money. I could get credit. I could do remittances from one state to another state at a lower cost. That is good enough a reason. I don't go by whether it's the latest technology or whether there's blockchain working at the back end or there's an AI algorithm that is transferring my money. The functionality of it is lowest cost, trust, and that gives me the output. So that's the real exponential technology to me.
100%, which really brings me to my next question. Fintech is highly associated with digital identity. Digital identity being all your information are, paperless or completely digitalized. Do you not think that governments will be reluctant to use these for security concerns, especially governments that are not really sure of their cybersecurity, for example?
Yep. Well, if I go first, I mean, there's plenty of examples of countries that are in emerging markets being more digitalized than countries in the West. Take Estonia, for example. Estonia is probably the most digitalized economy in the world. You can vote on blockchain. You've got all your medical records freely available to you. You can see everything that doctors have written about you, and it's all connected to your tax records. Everything is connected on one centralized system. So I don't think it's a question of whether or not a country is developed or not. I think it's a question of how aware are the politicians in those countries? How much are they willing to give something a try? And unfortunately, I think many places around the world, our politicians are far, far behind what's actually happening. So tech is moving really, really quickly, and people like me can barely keep up, and businesses are below that. But regulators and governments, they're down here. I mean, the head of cybersecurity, the minister responsible for cybersecurity in Japan, doesn't even own a computer. That's the state we're looking at in some countries.
Exactly, and that's a developed country. So you can only imagine like developing countries.
Right.
Mr. Arvind, do you think that security concerns are maybe somewhat on some level stopping the integration of digital identity?
I think I'll rephrase my answer or your question and then answer that.
Be my guest.
It is number one, the legacy. Number two, the legacy systems that exist. So let's understand America, 340 million people. They have an old social security system, and that works. And so we're saying, why change? What ain't broken? Whereas countries like India, we have the biggest digital identity system in the world. It's biometric. It's biometrically verified digital identity. 1.3 billion people on it, right? But it's not owned by a company. So the trust comes from the fact that it's owned by the government. The government runs it in a semi-PPP mode, and the people participate in it. And it's an open platform. Everybody can come and benefit from it. Government, society, citizens, banks do KYC on it. Now, of course, there are security concerns everywhere in the world. There is going to be privacy concerns, cybersecurity concerns, but we have to address that. As Riaz said, the regulator and the policymakers have to understand the bigger benefits of it. And I personally feel it's led by the CEO of that country, which is president or the prime minister. The head of state of that country needs to understand the benefit of it. But do you think cybersecurity concerns are not existing in India? We live in a very lively neighborhood, by the way. And our lively neighborhood keeps attacking us all the time. So it's not that we don't have cybersecurity concerns in India. Every country has. Estonia has huge cybersecurity concerns from their neighbors, but they went ahead. They actually went ahead because of cybersecurity. They wanted to securitize their country a lot more. So these are not impediments to implement digital identity. The impediments to digital identity are legacy systems, legacy mindsets, and lack of leadership. Let me actually say it very bluntly. Today, the World Bank recognizes that ID for development. Everybody is coming together to say we need an identity system, a digital identity system, to help countries save a lot of money. I'll give you one example. I don't know whether time permits or not, I can go at depth. But I talked about financial inclusion. Why financial inclusion could not happen in many countries. India had 60% population not financially included. But we included them in 2 years because there was a digital identity. We used it for KYC. The government used to spend, used to waste 85% of its resources transferring money, benefits or welfare to fake and ghost and duplicates and dead people. Right? I have a digital identity system now where the money transfers directly to a person's bank account. $100 billion gets spent, $100 billion get transferred. 85 billion that was lost in translation, it's all gone. It's a great ROI. Somebody has to make business sense to the government. So leaders who understand this will make the decision.
Yeah, I agree. The only issue, though, with giving governments too much power over this is that you could end up with a situation like we have in China, where you've got a social credit system whereby everybody is ranked out of 1,000 points, and if you've got higher points than me, Dana, it means you can live in certain parts of Beijing and I can't. In fact, this week it was reported you can get on the train quicker than I can because you've got a better social credit score. So I do worry about giving governments too much control over our data. I think the private sector sometimes can do a better job of that. Although, some of them are iffy too. Look at
But
Facebook.
Riaz, I will only say combine and just add democracy to that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So the moment you add democracy to that, I think you solve that problem.
Yes. Most of these issues happen.
So I mean, I don't want to comment on what Chinese policies are. I would be biased in saying that, but at the end of the day, when you have a good democratic system, you add a good technology, it's going to be used fairly, of course. The assumption is that, and it's accountable.
Absolutely.
The big platforms are not accountable in India.
Yeah. The only issue is, what is democracy if all of our news is then filtered through the people who can pay the most for certain types of views, such as Cambridge Analytica influencing elections such as Brexit or Trump, etc. So I do worry about how much power we give to the social media companies and how much they can really influence.
Absolutely. We have to be very, very concerned about that as we go along. And those, as I said, those are absolutely big policy regulatory concerns that we need to make sure the citizens come first.
100%. So you mentioned that one main, one main problem that we face is decision makers or politicians not being convinced or not being informed enough. And in one of your TED Talks, Mr. Riaz, entitled Rise Above the Machine, you quoted Yoda saying, yeah, it was I love the quote, the greatest teacher failure is.
Yes.
But do you think large industries and politicians are afraid of failure at this point? Like, there is so much on stake here. It's a huge gamble. How could you potentially convince them to take, to be bold and take such a huge step?
It's really, really, really difficult. It's very easy to say, hey, we should, all be failing fast and failing often. Now, if you're in a smaller company, maybe you can do that. If you're in a startup that's well-funded, maybe you can afford to fail a few times and pivot. If you're in a large established company, it's quite scary. If you're the manager responsible for a large profit and loss account, a large part of the business, it's quite scary for you to say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice this for this other thing that I'm going to invest in. And if I fail, it's okay. We'll just learn from failure and we'll move on. A lot of those managers are not in companies that encourage that trying. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to shift our mind from just rewarding success to rewarding effort. So if somebody tries, we actually celebrate that. And then we say, this is what we learned as an organization. So I remember being, when I was head of a particular business unit, one of the things I did was I sent a message to everybody in our unit when we lost a piece of work. So this is a piece of work we had for many years, and then we lost it. And my predecessors used to forget about it. That's lost. Let's just talk about the wins. But I actually deliberately chose to talk about the losses because I wanted to understand what we could learn from them. And people trust you more if you're going to be honest and say, yeah, we did lose this key client, but this is why, and this is what we're going to take away from it. This is what we're all going to do differently. So I think that it's down to the leader to actually encourage people trying and not just encourage the ones that are succeeding.
For sure, 100%. You have also discussed, both of you actually, several times, the importance of reskilling, of integrating automation, data analytics, etc., of new sciences, especially in schools. because the new generations are the ones that are going to be, the leaders of the future. So despite that, there is right now a gap, for example, between what we learn in universities and what we find in the market. How can we bridge that gap? How do you think we can bridge that gap?
Arvind?
Well, I think, see, the one thing we all have to recognize that the skills required for the future are very, very agile. You need to bit size education a lot. And the standard piece of education set skilling will not work. Two, we also have to recognize, and this is my favorite, the 4D rule. I always explain that anything that is dirty, dangerous, duplicate, and delicate will get automated or robotized, or AI will take over. And you have to hard reality. That hard reality has to strike all of us. That the 4D rule will apply. There will be jobs that will be lost. You have to reskill yourself, or when you prepare for this career 4 years down the road, you have to understand the agility that you need in your thinking, in your education. And the third piece of very important information, which is attributed to an innovator, one of the greatest innovators of at least my time, and I'm sure Riaz's time, is Steve Jobs. That technology is great, but technology becomes gray. It can make heart sing when it's combined with social sciences and humanities. I think that's another very important thing. We have to understand tech alone is not going to solve all the problems of the world. The skilling has to be social sciences, humanities, tech, understanding of ethics, all combined. That's the new world that we are entering as we go forward. And we have to use massive digital platforms to deliver education and skills. And this is something, it's a very, very continuous process. We are entering into an era which, we've been saying fourth industrial revolution and so many things, but this is an era where while programming is going to be important, computer science is going to be important, but combination of problems, multiple areas, the interdisciplinary thing that we have talked about for ages really comes alive in fourth industrial revolution. That's something that we have to keep in mind.
I love what you talk about, Arvind. You talked about three things: bite-size education, you talked about adaptability, and you talked about combining tech skills with human skills. I couldn't have said it better myself. So on bite-size, one of the things I've done at EY is we needed to convert 300,000 people to be ready for the future of work and to be able to help our clients. And it's really difficult encouraging 300,000 people to learn new stuff. And so what we did is we created bite-sized learning called EY badges. And so everybody can do, say, 15 hours of learning. Then they have to apply that learning for 30 hours, and then they get a bronze badge, and it goes all the way up to platinum. And we invented this, 2.5 years ago. Now we've got 105,000 people with EY badges. What we've then did was combine the badges in such a way that you could earn a degree. And because I'm connected to the Holt Prize, we chose Holt International Business School to be our MBA partner. And last week, we gave out the first 8 of our graduates of the EY Tech MBA using our bite-size EY badges underneath them and some work above at the top in order to earn their MBA. Now, we've offered that 300,000 MBA for free to 300,000 people in EY. And to me, that's about the democratization of executive education. The problem is it's very expensive, too expensive for most people to go out and re-educate themselves. And I think we need to go to bite-size. We need to go to free in order to make this transition happen. I've got 3 friends who happen to be truck drivers. They're all into cars like I am, so I know them as good friends. Over the last 5 years, I've had really deep talks with all 3 of them to say, your profession will no longer exist in a few years' time. And all 3 of them have totally ignored me because they can't.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It might be, but my message to them is, what else are you passionate about? Go and do something you're passionate about on the side, and then build that, and that will become your main profession. It's because they don't believe it, because they don't see it in front of their eyes. And I think the big thing we've got to do is to be able to help all these people whose jobs are going to disappear, whether they're fast food workers, whether they're cashiers, whether they're drivers, whatever it might be, or indeed if they're administrators or accountants. We have to help these people reskill for the future. And I think what you said, Arvind, about, it's not just about tech skills. My EY badges are not just about tech skills. They're equally about mindset skills, because you need the right tech skill set and the right mindset to come together.
Absolutely.
Future. So adaptability, curiosity, resilience, inspiration, these are all important skill sets that we offer learning for EY badges for that reason. So I loved what you said.
Sure. That's absolutely inspiring. And in the spirit, actually, of agility and adaptability, with the Health Prize, the Health Prize Accelerator this year was the first ever fully digital accelerator. And, it helped startups. And I'm talking about this because I was one of the startups that joined the accelerator this year. Digitally, we were able to absorb both soft skills and technical skills, and along with social skills. So it is absolutely amazing what technology can do regarding that.
And Dana, did you win the $100,000 prize yesterday?
Unfortunately, I did not.
Okay. Well, 10 teams
Hopefully.
did. 10 teams did, and we're really excited about those teams.
Yes, it's absolutely life-changing. And honestly, even not winning was absolutely life-changing because the learning experience was just magnificent. I'm an engineering student, and getting into business like that was just life-changing. So shifting a little bit the industry that I'm going to discuss right now, my question is to you, Mr. Arvind. So throughout your journey, you have also emphasized the importance of leveraging tech and digital solutions in governance to empower nations. What are some takeaways from the Indian digitalization process, and the Indian experience that you think should be implemented in other developing countries?
I think I'm a big believer. The lessons that come out of Indian digital journey is number one, that we need to have platforms which are open, indigenous, where the people are really giving, are equal participant in that. And the Indian experience is India has a platform called India Stack, which is the only 1 in 10 platforms in the world which has more than 1 billion users and is not privately owned. It's a public platform. It's a public goods platform. Countries need to start looking at digital infrastructure as a public goods, national public goods. Like you have roads, you have electricity grids, you have healthcare. You have to have digital infrastructure as a public goods infrastructure. And the moment you start that approach, I think you start on a very different journey of developing your digital transformation as a nation. Two, I think Riaz talked about, and very passionately talked about, the bite-sizing experience. I mean, 300,000 people inside ENY. I think nations also need to start investing in their people's digital literacy. At scale. It's not just for computer programming. That's like learning how to program. I'm just talking about basic cyber hygiene, digital literacy, and that has a lot of long-term productivity gains, and that's another second pillar of your digital transformation. And the third pillar of your digital transformation is building the national grids for data, carrying the data, bringing data to rural areas. That also brings down the cost of data. The more you democratize data access and data cost, internet data cost, the higher dividend it pays in productivity of a nation. So I think three things: bringing access and affordability to internet. Two, and that includes cost of smartphones, bringing skills to people, literacy to people. And three, building public digital platforms as national public goods, as national digital infrastructure. So those are the three top lessons. And of course, these are lessons, but the more important thing in this is the doer. and the doer is always the CEO of the country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Singapore has done a really good job, I think, of offering up learning to all their people. Every person gets so many thousands of these dollars, if you like, that they can apply onto a website and do some learning for the future. And I'm really pleased that the UK, even the UK, which really desperately needed to do this, had just announced it's going to do the same. So I think that's what governments need to do. Exactly what you're saying is open up some of this bite-sized learning to its people. Something we're going to do in EY is open it up to people in developed nations. So we're looking to work with bodies such as the United Nations to offer up our learning to people in developing countries.
But I would like to ask, isn't that a heavy financial burden on government?
Well, not necessarily. So that's $7,000 that I said is not real money. It's just money, if you like, credits that you spend online. So no, they need to work with a university or a company like ours to help produce that learning, make that learning available. And the reason why you want to apply credits to it is because you want to give it some idea that it's scarce. Because if you just say, here's all of our learning, do it whenever you want, anytime, people tend not to do it. Whereas if you say, you've got 1,500 credits to spend this year, and here's the body of learning you can learn from, you're more likely to use it. So it's just a bit of clever psychology to get people to do it. So in fact, governments can do it for free. They just need to find organizations to work with to develop the learning for them.
All right. So on to my next question is, what do you think the future holds with the exponential growth of technology in our everyday lives and interactions? Exponential technology is not just affecting industries, but it's also affecting micro activities that we do day to day. Do you think it will be 100% a positive shift, or will we have some problems, especially concerning, social sciences and social interactions?
Yeah, I think let me answer that first, if you may, Riaz. This is, the question that you again are posing, Dana, is really asking whether exponential technology will make us a better society. And actually, the answer is, if the technology is fair, the technology follows and takes input of all the diverse data sets that exist all across the world, and it solves real bottom of the pyramid problems, I think it will change our lives, and any technology can change our lives. The ethics, the transparency, the fairness, not having biases built into it, and having this black box approach doesn't help a technology. Technologies need to be very, very fair and understand that the world is 7.5, 8 billion people. It's not a few people coding away to glory in an office. So that is a very, very critical component, and that's what I take away from exponential technology really helping society. A very bottom-up approach, and I always say this. Developing countries have their back towards the wall. They are more likely to produce these exponential societal solutions. And Israel is a great example. Israel as a country was pushed towards the wall. They have been a cradle of innovation for many things because they had no other choice. So scarcity is the mother of this innovation. And I think those will be the lessons where societies will be pushed. They will need to adopt technology that solves real societal problems. And that's the exponential technology that I look forward to.
Yeah, but what if, sorry, just before moving on, what if it wasn't? What if exponential technology was not fair, we didn't have scarcity of data? What are the problems and challenges that will rise in the future? Is it all, I know you are saying that it will solve many problems, but what if it wasn't used correctly?
Well, if it is not used correctly, it is, remember, it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, what can solve a lot of problems and can create bigger problems. And I think any technology, whether exponential or not, I mean, can actually be placed in the wrong hands, have wrong governance, have wrong ethics, have wrong fairness. It can wreak havoc. So that's why we need better global standards and governance around how technology can be used. Companies are now coming out and signing the non-weaponization of AI, for example. They're saying we will pledge that we will not weaponize AI. AI has the potential to weaponize almost any data, any using algorithms in a manner that you and me cannot imagine. So I look forward to companies coming and pledging, at least taking the first step, saying we are not going to weaponize AI. And that's a real threat, Dana, that you have mentioned. I mean, far ahead, we can see this possibility. So we have to prevent it today.
So then I spend about a large part, well, pre-COVID, I used to spend a lot of my time in Silicon Valley. I'm hoping I can do that again and go, every other month to Silicon Valley. And one of the big discussions I have with my friends and colleagues there is the future going to be Star Trek or is it going to be Mad Max? And they're two old films that, one has got this very positive view of the future and the other one's got a very negative view of the future. And that's a long discussion, exactly as Arvind says, technology is a tool. So I like to think of it like a hammer. You can build a house with a hammer, but you can also kill somebody with a hammer. So it's the tool. And what we need to do is to do some of the things Arvind's talking about, is to say, how can we make sure, how can we encourage people to use it for the better so that we can ensure that we don't have this Mad Max society. Over the last 30, 40 years, we've seen an increase in the use of technology, and it's definitely made the world much more productive. But if you actually look at the data, and the data is readily available for the US, it's less readily available elsewhere. So you look at the data in the US and you say, what's happened over those years as we've got much more productive? What's happened to the average person? And what you find is that average hourly wages over that time have pretty much stayed the same as productivity has gone up. And the difference between productivity going up and average hourly wages, that difference is going to the owners of capital, i.e. people who are already wealthy. And I think that's a big concern for us, is that this technological change can lead to greater inequality, not less inequality. And that's what we've all got to fight towards. Dana, are you with us? I thought we lost you for a second.
Yes, I am back. So I missed half of what, yes.
Oh, you missed half of what I said. All I was saying is I think there's going to be an increasing difference.
You had announced that you had won the award and you missed that.
The people who are the owners of capital versus the owners of labor, i.e. people who are already rich, have done much better than people who are getting paid hourly, for example. And it's things like, whether or not, I don't know whether it'll work or not, but universal basic income. There's been a bunch of trials around the world to make sure that there is a social safety net for those people who do end up losing their jobs. And certainly in the trials I've looked at, whether it's Stockton in California this last year or the year before in Finland, each of these trials seem to say, yeah, actually, when you guarantee to somebody that they will get a certain amount every month, whether they work or not, that money allows them to do things such as care for their relatives, spend more time with their family, etc., and try out new things. They're more likely to be entrepreneurs. And these are all good things. These are the things we should be valuing. My worry is that we are valuing the wrong things. In this last year, with COVID, we've had all these health workers who, certainly in the UK, are amongst the lowest paid people. And all these health workers who have been working 7 days a week in incredibly difficult conditions, and the government turns around and gives them a 1% pay rise. I mean, there is something wrong in society where we don't value that, but we value people who bet on GameStop.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Mr. Arvind, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about Digital India Foundation.
Dana, I've been working in India in different spaces, policy space, and our foundation works in digital inclusion, making sure the right policies are there for India. platform governance, cybersecurity, and local manufacturing. Those are some of the areas that we ensure. We have a very ambitious plan in India to really triple our digital economy to $1 trillion economy, make it 20% of the Indian overall economy of $5 trillion. So a lot of agile thinking, policy making is required for us to be able to achieve that. And I'm doing my bit, a little bit, on that mission, and that's what our foundation does. It's a for the world. I think there is a time that we need to understand how technology can be a game changer for the overall nation and society. And a lot of things our foundation does is to teach the relevant lessons from India for other countries to emulate and learn from and adopt from. So it's it's absolutely open approach. So our approach is open. It's an open playbook. Come and learn from us.
Do you think, and I'm 100% sure that many countries are just, trying to absorb from the Indian experience, which has been honestly more than amazing and more than inspiring. But I have a different question right now. Do you think that the burden should be less on governments and maybe more on individual reskilling and individual learning? Do you think that maybe individuals should take matters in their own hands and start reskilling themselves rather than wait for governments to pick them up?
Absolutely, absolutely. I always say that in the age of machine learning, you've got to turn yourself into a learning machine. So you turn the words around. The age of machine learning, become a learning machine, which means take every opportunity you can to learn as much as you can about all of these things. YouTube is fantastic because you can just type in any subject, I don't know, blockchain, and instantly you can get a blockchain 101, 201, 301, all the way. There's even how to explain blockchain to a 5-year-old on there. So you've got to be curious. You've got to spend your time saying, what can I learn from everything? Even when you fail, what can I learn from that? So I would put curiosity at the heart of what we need to look at. I run a school in North London for disadvantaged kids. One of the key values we teach them is curiosity, because whatever we teach them today, okay, there's some basic things we teach them, like maths and English, which are going to be relevant in the future. But most of the other stuff we tell them, that's not going to be relevant. And anyway, it's going to be available at the touch of a hand on Google. So what should we be teaching them? Should we be teaching them knowledge, or should we be teaching them values? And should we be teaching them about emotional and social skills? And teaching them about how to critically think about something. When something is presented to you, do you just accept it, or do you think about it and think about how it could be different? And finally, we think about how they can be creative, because the machines won't be able to be as creative as you are. They can fake creativity, but they won't be able to be as creative as you are. And the best way to get creativity is to surround yourself with people who are not like you. So diversity is incredibly important. One of the things I love about the whole prize is because we have people, 500,000 students from all over the world, all working together and meeting each other. In the olden days, meeting each other physically. Today, meeting each other virtually. It's an incredible way of getting so much diverse knowledge and input into it, and it helps you be much more creative. So I think, it's really about curiosity. It's about critical thinking. It's about social skills, and it's about creativity through diversity. They're the key things that we're teaching our kids.
Absolutely, like like they say, don't give me a fish, teach me how to fish.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's about more. It's more about changing the entire mindset. It's about shifting our sources of knowledge from traditional sources to the internet. That is now the biggest source of knowledge in the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think this concludes my questions. I'd like to give you the floor for your conclusion word.
Okay, Arvind, do you want to go first?
Arvind.
I think, as I said, we are at an inflection point in the confluence of fourth industrial revolution really making an impact on society. It will definitely make an impact on businesses, but if you look at a social impact, we are at that inflection point. And in this inflection point, nations, societies need to come together. Citizens need to understand the importance of what Riaz said of being a learning machine, being creative and participating in a very creative manner. And thirdly, I think platforms and technologies that exist today need to be more responsible. AI needs to be more responsible. A more responsible approach to technology, AI in general, has to be there, and and the startup culture has to be encouraged in each nation. Societies need to think more entrepreneurial, whether it's the government or whether it's organizations or whether it's individuals. So if all these ingredients come together, we have I can trust our future to be good.
100%.
Yeah, and I would conclude by saying it is really about education for me, and so being curious is incredibly important. Also, you can improve the lives of people through either helping them get educated or helping them start businesses. Those are the two ways I know how to lift people out of poverty or lift them into success. So think about the education that you're getting. Think about the entrepreneurial opportunities that you have. Most existing businesses are too fat, lazy, and rich to really take up these new opportunities. That's where the excitement lies. As I was saying earlier, the innovation doesn't happen at the core of these big companies. It happens on the periphery. So that's the opportunity for startups, is to do something these old companies won't do. And finally, I think, it's quite scary, because when you think about all this, you think about members of your family who are doing jobs like that, or your friends, and you think, wow, what is going to happen in the future? And I think this is where what the Chinese say about crisis comes in handy, because the Chinese word for crisis is represented in two pictograms. One of the pictograms means danger and the other means opportunity. And it's down to each of us whether we see all this change as being one that's full of danger, or we see it as full of opportunity. And I hope everyone today is inspired to see it as full of opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for being here present with me on this panel. It has been more than wonderful to talking to you, and you have given me, more than I might learn in all my 5 years of of university. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Dana.
And thank you for being here and giving us some of your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
I'd like to remind our audience of our next digital speakers panel happening on April, where the topic will be mindfulness. I'd like to thank my guests one last time, Mr. Arvind Gupta and Mr. Riaz Shah. This was Dana Daras with the Health Prize Digital Speakers Series. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. Bye-bye.